Hello and welcome to the news on HOMEF TV. I am Kome Odomo. First, the highlights. NDAC demands restoration of impacted communities, holds government accountable. Niger Delta Women Group warns stakeholders, Shell, over liability and cleanup. HOMEF book reading session with His Royal Majesty King Dakolo advocates for environmental protection. Now the news in detail. The challenge of abandoned crude oil infrastructure in the Niger Delta appears to be part of the game to maximize profits and sacrifice the environment. This is so consistent that it cannot be accidental. With almost 70 years of oil extraction, the region has many undecommissioned oil wells and several gas flares. To chart the way out of the social and ecological genocide in the Niger Delta, using the Bayelsa State as a case study, a symposium was recently convened at the York University, Toronto, Canada, which drew participants including scholars, community leaders, activists to examine the enduring environmental crisis critically. It drew lessons from a just global transition. Now the report.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region exemplifies a broader pattern of extractive violence in resource-rich areas across the global south and indigenous territories of countries such as Canada and the United States. According to the Bayelsa State Oil and Environment Commission 2023 and the United Nations Environment Program Assessment of the Ongoni Environment 2011. Decades of laxly regulated petroleum extraction by international oil companies has resulted in catastrophic environmental degradation and public health emergencies, with oil spills, gas flaring, and toxic waste contaminating the air, water, and soil, thereby threatening the biodiversity and livelihoods. The Niger Delta is an example of how oil companies are increasingly offloading polluting assets to less regulated jurisdictions, effectively creating new sacrifice zones in the era of energy transition. At the global level, the concept of a just transition is firmly established in policy discussions, including a climate change negotiations and G7 and G20 summits. This mainstreaming of the discourse is problematic because dominant forces tend to deploy the concept in ways that hollow out any real meaning.
Against the big global challenge of climate change, there's a lot of talk about transition from fossil fuels to other forms of energy that are cleaner. And that means that we need to move away from the sources of pollution, such as oil, coal, and the rest. But the question we are asking is, how can you transition? How can you transition from fossils without addressing the imprints of decades of fossil operation? If you transit from fossil fuels and you no longer produce in Bayelsa, does that take away the pollution that lives inside of the people?
We cannot have double standards. It's abusive, it's predatory, it's racist, quite frankly. It's one standard for the north, a completely different standard for somewhere else. It's not good enough. And I think, for those in Shell and the other companies who may come across this message, and hopefully they will be coming across it from many directions, over the next weeks and months, the time is up. You're going to clean up, and we're going to make you clean up.
I like the idea of bringing the symposium to York University in Canada because it created that opportunity to deepen their awareness, talk about the situation in the Niger Delta to activists from other parts of the world. And it's also continue to put on the front burner the issues, the environmental challenges in the Niger Delta, especially at this time that the major oil companies have just taken a stroll and leaving the negative legacy in the communities in the Niger Delta. The community women feel helpless. It's like after all the campaigns, and they just left and handed over their assets to local companies. So it is like telling us, go and fight your people. And it is also like telling us there is nothing you can do because they have the backing of the federal government of Nigeria.
A gamut of challenges that people in the Niger Delta are facing, where we really need to see the building of synergy. Part of what we're here as well to have the conversation between the academia, the civil society, and also some of the institutions that were created by state government, like the Bayelsa State Commission on Environment and Pollution, Oil and Environment, to see how some of the emerging issues, recommendations, and also findings from that commission can be used to not only hold the oil companies accountable alone, but at the same time ensure that we remediate the decades of atrocities that have been committed against the people of the Niger Delta.
In this petroleum complex, state power and local and national elites serve global capital imperatives in ways that undermine local regulations. The Bayelsa Commission report highlights this feature of regulation. It is also revealed how Western European and North American oil companies have been allowed to dump toxic assets through non-transparent asset sales to companies linked to local elites. Oduda Batasukwo for HOMEF TV.
Community leaders, environmentalists, and civil society actors have bemoaned the heightened environmental degradation in the Niger Delta region. The first Niger Delta Alternative Convergence, held in Bayelsa State, Nigeria, drew attention to the myriads of oil and gas pollution in the region and declared that about $150 billion will be needed for the remediation and restoration efforts in the area over the first 5 years. This shows the significant push to examine and highlight environmental assessments conducted in the region to date. Our correspondent Onome Etisuru has the report.
Speaking on the theme, Environmental Genocide, Time for Remediation, Restoration and Reparation at the 4th Niger Delta Alternatives Convergence, INDAC, Nimo Bassi, the lead convener, noted that besides remediation and restoration, more than that estimated amount would be needed annually as reparations for human and ecological losses occasioned by the deliberate destruction of the Niger Delta. The keynote speaker, Dr. Isaac Asume Oswaka, coordinator of Social Action International, said for over 60 years, the Niger Delta's lands and waters have been ravaged by unrelenting oil pollution, following two comprehensively documented landmark assessments, the 2023 Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission report and the 2011 UNEP assessment.
One thing is that the fact that we're facing environmental genocide in Niger Delta cannot be disputed. And it's absolutely shocking to us that government has pretended nothing is happening here. And sometimes governments, at all levels, believe that because people have managed to survive, then they can be left to keep on struggling. But this requires real action. I would believe that there should be a general environmental restoration fund set up to handle the crisis in the entire Niger Delta.
I think the main recommendation is that the polluter pays. It's basic. All over the world, there's understanding that whichever entity is responsible for polluting an area should be held responsible for the cleanup. And the Niger Delta, Nigeria should not be different. It is very clear that international oil companies like Shell, like Total, like Chevron have for many decades devastated the Niger Delta environment. And this has been shown to be deliberate with the collusion of the Nigerian state, we must say.
The oil thief is not from the Niger Delta, cannot be from the Niger Delta. The oil thief cannot spend a night in the creeks of the Niger Delta. I can swear that it is not possible for an oil thief to be in the creeks of the Niger Delta overnight. I am also further emphasizing that the federal government of Nigeria does not know, at least pretends not to know, who the oil thieves are.
To ensure redress for decades of unmitigated exploitation, expropriation, and human rights abuses, panelists shared views that would require polluters to pay direct reparations.
We keep pushing out these issues. We need documentaries out. It may not be extended newspaper reports. but short skits also capturing moments. We need to keep the stories alive. And more importantly, because you see, you have a whole generation of young people who are online, but a lot of them are not very knowledgeable about the important things that even look at. As young as any of you here is, you have barrels of oil in your blood, whether you like it or not.
We need to organize differently. And organizing differently is staying with the community. And secondly, that we need to, you say if we go right tire. That before, just writing in the Guardian, they will look for you. They will take action, even though it's cosmetic. But at least there will be response.
NDAC ensures that mindless ecological assault does not persist. The key demands set forth in the Niger Delta Manifesto for Socio-Ecological Justice provides vital pathways for halting the environmental genocide that continues to engulf the region and initiating the urgent steps for the remediation and restoration of the Niger Delta. Onome Etisioro for HOMEF TV.
House of Mother Earth Foundation has trained communities in Rivers State on evidence gathering to strengthen their fight against environmental pollution. The one-day workshop aimed to equip grassroots eco-defenders with skills to monitor, report, and advocate for environmental justice. The report.
The training in Rivers State that brought together residents from pollution-affected communities emphasized the need for actionable evidence to hold polluters accountable and secure justice for degraded environments. Speaking on the initiative, HOMEF's Executive Director, Nemo Bassi, stressed that credible evidence is crucial in the growing struggle for environmental justice. He noted that consistent training has already improved local monitoring and reporting efforts. The legal officer, Onome Etisioro, also highlighted the importance of legal awareness in supporting communities in challenging environmental abuses.
We have to keep on training. There's no end to the training. It's actually a learning process. And today, we are specifically looking at evidence gathering, not only monitoring and reporting what you are seeing. We are looking at when something happens, what kind of evidence can you collect that is actionable? What evidence will be accepted by the court, for example? How do you get legal help if there's a problem that you need to take to court? And who is the person that is in the best position to gather evidence that can be useful? These are the things we're focusing on today because the cases are getting more complicated and we need to have competent individuals within communities who can produce the evidence because they live the experience, they experience the problems. They're the best to speak up and present actionable evidence when necessary.
If we go to court and then we are giving our evidence or our testimonies and we cannot determine or we cannot prove to the court that this thing happened on this day, to the court, that thing is ambiguous and they cannot say it happened for real or it's not true. Anything that will make the court have a shaky mind is something that the court does not like. So they will not want to dwell on, the judge will not want to dwell on it. You as a witness, if you come in as a witness and say, this spill happened though, the judge will not say, oh, you are lying. But what is important to the judge is that there is evidence that it happened, which means you know when it happened.
Participants expressed gratitude for the training and pledged to share knowledge with others and serve as environmental watchdogs.
Environmental pollution has been a big thing, and of course amongst women it has been something that has been widely reported amongst us. So for instance, we go out, we see these things, we come back, we talk about them, but we do not understand that we can take this a bit further. So with the knowledge that we have from this session that we've just had, we're going back into our communities to re-emphasize, to re-educate other members of other women like us as well.
With this initiative, HOMEF reinstates its commitment to continuing to empower communities with adequate skills to take action against environmental degradation. Esele Ojianelo for HOMEF TV.
The Niger Delta region of Nigeria, rich in vast natural resources, has witnessed substantial economic activities and growth, yet continue to grapple with pervasive corruption, weak governance, and underdevelopment. To address these challenges, stakeholders convened at the Niger Delta Regional Anti-Corruption Learning Summit 2025 in Rivers State.
Social Action International organized the summit, building stakeholders' resilience for sustained accountability and development to address governance challenges in the oil-rich region. Participants included civil society groups, traditional rulers, students, anti-graft agencies such as the EFCC and ICPC and other NGOs. In his opening remarks, Dr. Isaac Oswoka, Executive Director of Social Action International, criticized the political manipulation and resource capture in Rivers State.
That corruption has transformed to impunity over the past few years. So it appears that we may not have achieved all the results if we look at the way that those that occupy public offices behave. If we look at the states across the country, if we look at the way that even governors, elected, so-called elected governors, treat state resources as their private estate, to use at will, to dispose at will. If we see the way that elections are organized in this country, everybody in this country knows that the elections are a joke. It's a joke. That what is announced as results don't always reflect the will of the people.
Environmental rights activists emphasized the importance of identifying communities' genuine needs before project execution.
There's been a lot of corruption built around the implementation of constituency projects, but we feel that it is important to support this claim with facts and figures, particularly with the realities we found on the field. Hence, we commissioned some partners of civil society organizations across 5 states to carry out extensive monitoring of constituency projects across the state.
The government should create a department that should go around to get exactly what the people need. What we are talking about, needs assessment, not a lawmaker representing the people, writing something and claiming that you send it to the people, because you cannot be doing the same thing all the time and expecting a different result.
The problem is that when a project is assigned, are we assigning it to the right people? Is it what the community wants, or are we doing it the right way? I want to borrow from what a former leader in this country said. Change begins with me. Please, let us start changing our narrative. Let's start changing the way we look at things.
This gathering gives us an opportunity to cast away hypocrisy in the fight against corruption, to examine ourselves with so much introspection, to look at the areas that we have failed, the areas that we can do better. The citizen response in the fight against corruption seems rather too low. You would find a graphic example of this in the spate of, you may neglect to talk about it, but I would, in the spate and the rise of cybercrimes in the Niger Delta and, as it were, in Nigeria.
As the region grapples with corruption and underdevelopment, stakeholders hope these resolutions foster lasting change. Esele Ojanilo, HOMEF TV.
Thank you. We'll take a commercial, and when we return, we'll have other stories lined up for you. Hello and welcome to Ikike Digest, your learning space on HOMEF TV. So what are some of the risks that these defenders face?
They face arrests, they are killed, and those intimidations are very dangerous for the defenders, because some of the examples we have in Africa, in South Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, communities are fighting for their rights, and the system of oppressions also fight back, kill them. The example of Mama Fikele is there in South Africa, where she stood against the coal mining, and she was gunned down. And the case of Ken Saro-Wiwa also is here in Nigeria, where he was fighting against Shell oil extraction in Ogoni. So he stood against that extraction, and he was executed. And we also have Berta Cáceres in Latin America, Honduras, where she was killed because she stood against the development of hydroelectric dam.
Welcome back. And still in Rivers State, where community women want Shell over their liability. Impacted community members and international supporters have warned that Shell will retain legal liabilities and moral responsibility for the cleanup of his historical pollution in the Niger Delta if the buyer of its Nigerian subsidiary SPDC is unable to pay. This warning emerged as investors convened for the Shell PLC annual general meeting. These liabilities stem from over 70 years of oil extraction and exploration, amounting to tens of billions of dollars. Shell asserts that under the term of sale to Renaissance Group, a consortium of 5 firms, including 4 Nigerian exploration and production companies, it has transferred its liabilities to the buyer.
Nigerian authorities have raised concerns about Renaissance's ability to pay cleanup and remediation liabilities. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, initially rejected Shell's PLC's divestment application in October 2024, citing Renaissance's lack of financial and technical ability to manage the assets. While this ruling was overturned by the Nigerian presidency, SPDC, Renaissance, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria are now facing a lawsuit over the oil license transfer in Nigerian courts on the grounds of failure to comply with Nigerian law, including failing to provide a required study on the state of the environment. Dr. Okon, Executive Director of Kebakachi Women Development and Resource Center, noted, our findings from the blood test of 80 women in Otuabagi show hydrocarbon levels more than 8,000 times above World Health Organization permissible limits. The Bayelsa Oil and Environment Commission tested the blood of 1,600 persons, and all had hydrocarbons in their blood too. Women are suffering from respiratory diseases, fertility problems, breast cancer, and eyesight impairment, among many others. Shell cannot divest without cleanup and remediation. In a peaceful march against Shell's environmental abuse, community members frowned at the level of negligence. Cindy Coltman, co-director of HOMEF Netherlands, said, "We stand in solidarity with the people of the Niger Delta, calling for justice and accountability of Shell PLC." There is no mention of a cleanup fund in Shell's annual report regarding the sale of SPDC. This deal is unfair to those affected by decades of unabated oil pollution. Shell seems poised to develop, trade, and benefit from Nigerian offshore oil and gas without taking responsibility for cleaning up and decommissioning aging infrastructure onshore. This cannot stand. Odudra Basiasuko for HOMEF TV.
The Trans-Niger pipeline erupted on the 6th of May 2025, triggering stems of crude oil flowing through Bidere community in Gokano local government area of Rivers State. The cause of this explosion is said to be equipment failure. A similar explosion occurred in Bodo community on the 17th of March 2025, causing a massive fire that spread through the mangroves. These spills show very clearly the massive risk the community will be exposed to if the federal government's desire to resume oil extraction in Ogoniland is realized. Our correspondent Nena Agbo has more.
Many community members have been internally displaced, while those already impacted by the spill are living in fear for their health and safety. On a visit by HOMEF team, along with other CSOs to the spill site, distressed indigents of the community expressed a high level of pain and a sense of exposure and abandonment.
Right now, the family is much well affected. Cannot cook anything in the house, neither to eat in the house. And we expect something needful to be done so that the house can be comfortable.
The Executive Director of Health of Mother Health Foundation, HOMEF, Dr. Nimo Bassi, expressed disappointment over the level of community neglect. Bassi called on all relevant authorities to take action to curtail the spread of the flowing crude.
We are very concerned about this, but this is a very strong point concerning why no new oil wells should be opened and the old ones that were shut down should be left shut down. They be properly secured, decommissioned and cleaned out, because now we're having this existing pipeline creating these horrors and it's taking so long to even respond to it. We can't allow this to keep on happening. Now people have a right to live in safety, to live in their own homes, to eat their food, protect their harvest, but now everything is lost around here.
This is unacceptable, and this is why we have been shouting that nobody should reopen any oil well in November. Now that they have not started anything, look at the mess. Talk of when they will start, and this is happening in an area that you told the world that you are cleaning up. You are cleaning up, and these are happening. How clean is the land? So it is funny for people to be talking about cleaning up our environment at the same time opening the oil wells.
HOMEF calls for swift action to plug the leakage, remediate the land, and carry out a thorough health audit on the exposed community members. Nena Abo for HOMEF TV.
Health of Mother Earth Foundation, HOMEF, hosted a book reading event featuring His Royal Majesty King Bubayi Dakolo, the Ibinanowe of Ekpetiama Kingdom. This event, the third in this year's Community and Culture series, emphasized the significance of promoting African culture through reading session and addressing Africa's demographic challenges, such as its abundance of youths juxtaposed with a scarcity of elders, while linking these issues to environmental degradation. Our correspondent Onome Etisuru completes the report.
Speaking about crude oil theft in the Niger Delta region, most especially in Bayelsa, which has impoverished the communities, polluted the land, and had health implications on the people, His Royal Majesty highlighted the carelessness of multinational companies responsible for the oil spillage during oil extraction. King Dakolo described the Niger Delta as a victim of ecocide, citing unchecked pollution, gas flaring, and decades of neglect by oil companies and regulators. He criticized Nigeria's regulatory agencies for failing to enforce environmental laws. King Bubayi Dakolo urged Nigerians to address the growing ecological crisis in the Niger Delta before it becomes irreversible. As an author, King Dakolo shared insights from his books, which expose environmental destruction and political betrayal in the Niger Delta. He called on citizens to take action to reclaim their land and future.
If there are so many youths and too few elders, what does it tell you? It means that the life expectancy is low. It means before you know it, you have died of something. And if you want to live long enough and enjoy your old age, then this is the time to act. So get more information, get on board, and speak the truth where you should.
Dr. Nimo Bassi, Executive Director of HOMEF, emphasized the urgent need for environmental awareness, acknowledging that the book reading series is critical to raising awareness and consciousness on environmental issues, sparking a need for action and informing the masses of the already documented solutions.
The purpose of our having book readings, poetry readings, movie days is for us to elevate the importance of our culture in raising consciousness for a safe environment. You will agree with me that in the past, and this is something I would like to emphasize, when you talk about Africa, a lot of people say there's a youth bulge. It's like almost as if it's something wrong
that we have so many young people in Africa. But the question we never ask is, how come there are so many young people and very few elders?
If we are good parents, some of these problems will be solved because they are using our children most times to do their activities. So parents, children, we have a lot to do. They say charity begins at home.
The event stressed the need for collective action to tackle the Niger Delta's ecological crisis. Onome Etisiro for HOMEF TV.
You've been watching the news on HOMEF TV. Thank you for staying with us. I am Kome Odomo.